She gave her lunch to the quiet stranger outside. Next morning, his foundation rebuilt her family shop. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. On a chilly Wednesday afternoon, Emma, a waitress at a small local diner in downtown Kansas City, noticed a man sitting outside on the bench across the street. He wasn't asking for anything, just quietly staring out at the busy world around him, dressed in worn-out clothes that suggested he had seen better days. The wind bit at the faces of everyone walking by, but the man remained still, like a statue, indifferent to the cold. Emma had been working at the diner for 3 years now. Her family's diner had been around for decades, but business had slowed down. The bills were piling up, and her father's health was worsening. Emma worked long hours every day, trying to keep the place running, often on little more than hope. As she walked back into the kitchen after delivering an order to a table, Emma glanced back at the stranger. She felt a twinge of sympathy. She didn't have much herself, but she had always been taught to give what little she could when someone needed it. Emma hesitated for a moment, then made up her mind. She grabbed the extra sandwich she had wrapped up earlier, just in case a customer wanted to take it to go. It wasn't much, but it was something. She walked outside, her boots crunching on the snow-covered sidewalk as she approached the man. "Hey, I hope you're not too cold," she said gently, holding out the sandwich. The man looked up at her, his expression unreadable at first. There was a pause, a moment of silence, before he took the sandwich from her hands. "Thank you," he said softly. His voice was quiet, almost as though speaking louder would break the fragile calm of the moment. He looked at the sandwich for a moment, then back up at Emma. "You didn't have to." Emma smiled and shook her head. "I just thought you could use it. Stay warm, okay?" She turned and walked back to the diner, not thinking much about it. She had done something small, but it was a kindness she hoped would make a difference. The evening passed like any other. The diner stayed busy, customers coming and going, and Emma did her best to keep up. But the stranger never left her mind. She couldn't shake the thought of him sitting outside, alone. The next morning, just as the sun was rising, Emma arrived at the diner, ready to start another long shift. But when she opened the door, she was greeted by an unexpected sight. Workers were everywhere, bustling about, and the entire front of the diner was surrounded by luxury vehicles. Emma stopped in her tracks. A man in a sharp suit approached her, holding a clipboard. "Good morning, Miss Rodriguez. I'm with the Johnson Foundation. We're here to take care of the renovations." Emma blinked in confusion. "Renovations? What's going on?" The man smiled politely. "You were recommended by a member of the foundation. We've come to rebuild your family's diner and cover all the costs. Mr. John Johnson insisted on this." Emma's heart skipped a beat. Mr. John Johnson? She remembered the quiet stranger from yesterday. She hadn't known who he was, but now she understood. She felt a rush of emotions, disbelief mixed with gratitude. She stepped aside, unable to fully grasp what was happening, as the workers went to work, tearing down the old walls and putting up new ones. The foundation had already set up everything: new kitchen equipment, fresh flooring, and even new signage. By the end of the day, Emma's little diner had been transformed into a beautiful, modern restaurant. It was as if a miracle had happened overnight. Emma stood in the middle of the room, stunned, watching the workers finish up. She didn't know how to process the overwhelming kindness she had received. Her family's diner, the place where her father had worked for so many years, had been given a second chance, all because of one stranger's quiet gesture. And just as quickly as they had come, the workers packed up, and Emma was left standing in her brand-new restaurant. The only thing left was a letter, addressed to her, from the Johnson Foundation. "Thank you for your kindness. This is our way of giving back. Keep this place alive, for your family and the people you serve. We believe in you." Emma smiled softly, a tear slipping down her cheek as she held the letter. It wasn't just the diner that had been rebuilt. It was her belief in the goodness of people. And she knew, from that moment on, that her life was about to change forever. The next morning, Emma arrived at the diner early, eager to see the progress. The sun had just begun to rise, casting a soft glow over the now revamped diner. She still couldn't fully process what had happened the day before. The workers from the foundation had been efficient, but there was still something surreal about the transformation. The old, worn-out diner that her family had run for years had been completely rebuilt overnight. It wasn't just the new appliances, the shiny countertops, or the gleaming floors. It was the fresh sense of hope that came with it. She stepped inside, running her fingers along the smooth surface of the counter. It felt like a dream. But as much as she wanted to take in the new surroundings, Emma couldn't shake the feeling of disbelief. How could one small act of kindness lead to something so monumental? Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of the bell above the door jingling. She turned to see a man in a sharp suit walking in, carrying a briefcase. He looked around with a practiced air, taking in the newly renovated space. Emma's heart skipped a beat when she recognized him. John, the man from the day before. He was standing right there, in her diner, looking just as calm and collected as he had outside, the day she had offered him her lunch. "Good morning, Miss Rodriguez," John said, his voice warm but with an underlying seriousness. "I trust everything is to your liking." Emma stood frozen for a moment, trying to make sense of what was happening. "Mr. Johnson," she managed to say, still stunned. I can't believe this. How did you?" John raised a hand, cutting her off with a gentle smile. "It's all part of the foundation's work," he explained. "I've been trying to help people like you for years. People who are doing their best but need a bit of support to keep going. When I saw you, I knew we could make a difference." Emma was at a loss for words. She had no idea what to say to someone who had just turned her entire world around. "I still don't understand," she said finally, her voice quiet. "Why me? Why my diner?" John walked over to the counter and leaned on it casually, studying her with a look of quiet understanding. "It's simple," he replied. "I used to be in a similar position, working hard, struggling to keep things afloat. My mother owned a small business, just like this one. I know how much work it takes, and I also know how easy it is for everything to fall apart. I just wanted to help someone who reminds me of her." Emma blinked, trying to process the unexpected revelation. John's voice softened as he continued. "I'm not here for publicity or recognition. I've been fortunate enough to be in a position to give back, and I do it for people like you. The ones who work tirelessly, often without seeing the rewards they deserve." Emma looked down at the counter, feeling a mixture of gratitude and overwhelming emotion. She had never thought that something like this could happen to her, that a stranger's kindness could change her life in such a profound way. "But there's more," John added, his tone shifting slightly. "I don't just want to rebuild your diner. I want to help you rebuild your life, too. I've been following your progress for a while now. I know you've been juggling multiple jobs, taking care of your father, keeping the diner going. I want to help with that, too." Emma's head shot up, her heart racing. "What do you mean?" she asked. John smiled, his expression a mix of seriousness and genuine care. "I'm offering you a partnership. I'll fund the renovations, but I'll also help you take your business to the next level. Marketing, management, whatever you need. And, of course, I'll make sure you have the time and resources to focus on what really matters." Emma's eyes widened. "You mean you want to invest in my diner? Help me expand it?" John nodded. "Exactly. I know it's a big decision, but I think you're ready. You've shown that you have the drive and the passion. All you need is the right support." Emma felt her heart swell with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. She had always wanted more for her family's business, but the thought of taking such a big step, of involving someone like John, made her nervous. I don't know," she said slowly, unsure if she could accept such an offer. "It's a huge responsibility." John leaned in slightly, his gaze softening. "I understand your hesitation, but I can promise you this. I'm not here to control you. I'm here to offer you a chance to grow, to build something lasting. You've been doing everything on your own for so long. It's time for you to have the support you deserve." The words hung in the air between them, and for the first time in a long while, Emma felt a spark of possibility. Maybe this was the moment her life had been waiting for. Maybe this was the turning point. But could she really take that leap? The thought of what could be was both exciting and terrifying. "I'll need some time to think about it," Emma finally said, her voice quiet but resolute. "Of course," John replied, standing up straight. "Take all the time you need. I'm here whenever you're ready." As he turned to leave, he paused at the door and looked back at her. "Just remember, Emma, sometimes the hardest part is asking for help. But it's worth it." Emma watched him walk out, the door closing softly behind him. She stood there for a long time, staring at the door, her mind racing with thoughts and possibilities. Could she really take this step? Could she trust this stranger who had already done so much for her? For the first time in a long time, Emma felt a glimmer of hope. She wasn't alone anymore. Emma spent the next few days in a whirlwind of thoughts, trying to decide whether to take John's offer. Every part of her wanted to say yes, to accept the opportunity to finally give her family's diner the future it deserved. But another part of her was hesitant. She had been on her own for so long, working tirelessly to keep things afloat. Could she really trust someone with such a significant part of her life? Her father's health had been deteriorating for months, and she was the one who had carried the burden of both caring for him and running the diner. The idea of handing over control to someone like John, who seemed so much more powerful and experienced than her, was daunting. But as the days passed, the weight of her decision grew heavier. On the morning of the fourth day, Emma found herself standing in front of the diner once again, staring at the newly renovated space. The fresh paint, the new flooring, and the gleaming countertops had all been done with such care. It was hard to believe this was the same place she had struggled to keep open just a few weeks ago. She took a deep breath and walked inside, the sound of the doorbell chiming softly as she entered. As she walked through the kitchen, she noticed the staff working efficiently, the atmosphere lighter, more energetic than it had been in months. It was as if the diner had come alive with the renovations. Emma couldn't help but smile. This was the place where she had grown up, where she had learned the value of hard work and perseverance. But now, it felt like it was ready for something more. She walked up to the counter, running her fingers along the smooth surface, and for the first time in a long while, she felt a sense of peace. She was ready to make a decision. She picked up the phone and dialed the number John had given her. The phone rang 3 times before he picked up. "Hello, Emma." John's voice was warm, reassuring. "Have you had a chance to think about our conversation?" Emma hesitated for a moment before speaking. "I've been thinking about it a lot," she said quietly, "and I've made up my mind. I want to move forward with your offer." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Are you sure?" John asked. "This is a big step." Emma took a deep breath. "I'm sure. My family deserves a future, and I can't do this alone anymore. I need help. I want to see the diner grow, and I trust you to help me get there." John's voice softened. "You won't regret this, Emma. I'll make sure of it. We'll make this business everything it can be and more." She felt a wave of relief wash over her. This was the right decision. She wasn't alone anymore. She wasn't just a waitress anymore. She was a business owner with a future ahead of her. Later that afternoon, Emma met John at his office to finalize the details. He greeted her with a firm handshake and a smile. "I'm glad you decided to go forward with this, Emma," he said as they sat down at his desk. "We'll start by getting a business plan in place. Then we'll focus on marketing and expanding. I have a lot of contacts who can help with that. But first, we need to make sure you're comfortable with the direction we're going." Emma nodded, feeling a little overwhelmed but also excited. John's confidence was contagious. For the first time, she could see a real future for her diner. The idea of marketing, expanding, and reaching new customers had always seemed impossible before, but now, with John's help, it felt like a real possibility. They spent the next few hours discussing the specifics. Emma learned about branding, advertising, and customer engagement strategies she had never even considered. John's business experience was impressive, and she was eager to learn. As the meeting ended, John stood up and extended his hand again. "Welcome to the next chapter, Emma," he said. "We're in this together." Emma shook his hand, feeling a sense of gratitude she hadn't expected. She had taken a leap of faith, and she knew it was the right one. The next day, Emma walked into her diner with a renewed sense of purpose. Her father, who had been resting in the back room, came out to greet her. "How's the place looking, kiddo?" he asked, his voice weak but still full of love. Emma smiled at him, a sense of pride filling her chest. "It's looking better than ever, Dad. We're going to make this place shine." Her father looked at her, his tired eyes sparkling with a hint of hope. "I'm proud of you, Emma," he said softly. "You've always had the heart for this business. Now, you've got the help you need." Emma walked over and hugged him tightly. "We're going to do this together, Dad. I promise." With the foundation in place, Emma and John worked tirelessly over the next few weeks to implement their plan. They revamped the diner's menu, updated the branding, and launched a marketing campaign that brought in new customers from all over the city. Word of the newly renovated diner spread quickly, and Emma watched as her dream of a thriving business began to come true. It wasn't just the renovations or the new customers. It was the sense of community and family that started to return to the diner. Emma realized that the kindness she had shown to a stranger had come full circle, not just rebuilding her family's business, but also reigniting the spirit of hope in her heart. She wasn't just a waitress anymore. She was a businesswoman, and the future looked brighter than ever. Emma had never imagined that a single decision, one moment of kindness, would transform her life in such a profound way. The past few weeks had been a blur of new beginnings, challenges, and growth. The diner was thriving, thanks to the renovations and the marketing strategies John had helped implement. The customers were pouring in, and the business was picking up in ways Emma had only dreamed of. She was now seeing her father smile more often, a sight she hadn't witnessed in months. The weight on her shoulders was starting to lighten, but with this newfound success came new responsibilities. Emma had to learn how to manage the growing business, handle the finances, and keep up with the increased demand. There were days when she felt overwhelmed, but John was always there, guiding her through the process, offering advice, and helping her navigate the complexities of running a business. His support was invaluable, and Emma was slowly learning to trust him, not just as a business partner, but as someone who genuinely cared about her and her family's well-being. One afternoon, while she was working behind the counter, John stopped by to check on her progress. He looked around the diner, his eyes scanning the space with approval. "You're doing great, Emma," he said with a smile. "I can see the hard work paying off." Emma wiped her hands on her apron and looked up at him, grateful for his encouragement. "It's not easy, but it's worth it. I feel like I'm finally in control of my life again." John nodded, his expression thoughtful. "That's the key. Taking control of your destiny. You've shown a lot of courage in the past few months, but I know you're ready for the next step." Emma furrowed her brow, unsure of what he meant. "What do you mean, the next step?" John leaned against the counter, his tone serious. "Well, I think it's time we start looking at expanding. You've got a good thing going here, and I think it's time to take this success to the next level." Emma's heart skipped a beat. "Expand? But how?" "We can open more locations, start offering delivery services, maybe even create a brand. There's a lot of potential here, Emma. You've already proven that you can run a business. Now it's about scaling it up." Emma's mind was racing. She had never considered expanding the diner before. It had always been her family's small, humble place, a community hub that served good food and offered a warm, welcoming atmosphere. But the idea of growing it, turning it into something bigger, was both thrilling and terrifying. "I don't know if I'm ready for all of that," she admitted, her voice uncertain. "It's a lot to think about." John smiled reassuringly. "You don't have to do it alone. I'm here to help. We can take it slow, make sure we're ready before making any big moves. But I believe in you, Emma. You've already come so far." Emma looked at him, feeling a surge of confidence. She had come this far because of her own determination and the support she had received from John. Maybe it was time to take the next step, to push herself beyond her comfort zone. Over the next few weeks, Emma and John worked together to create a business plan for expansion. They carefully selected new locations, researched delivery services, and developed a brand that reflected the diner's values of quality, community, and warmth. Emma found herself growing more excited about the future. She was no longer just a waitress trying to keep her family's business afloat. She was a businesswoman with a vision, a plan, and the drive to make it happen. The new locations began to take shape, and Emma watched with pride as her small family business grew into something much larger. She hired new staff, trained them in the diner's standards, and ensured that the core values of the business remained intact. But the most rewarding part of the process was seeing her father's health improve as the stress of running the diner lessened. He spent more time at home, resting and recovering, while Emma took the reins of the growing business. One evening, after a long day of meetings and planning, Emma sat down with her father in the living room of their home. He looked at her with a proud smile, his eyes filled with emotion. "You've done it, Emma," he said softly. "You've made it all happen. I'm so proud of you." Emma smiled back, her heart full. "I couldn't have done it without you, Dad. You taught me everything I know, and I couldn't have done it without John's help, either." Her father nodded. "You've always had it in you, Emma. You just needed the right opportunity, and you grabbed it." As she sat there with her father, Emma realized just how far she had come. She had gone from struggling to keep the diner open to expanding it into a successful, growing business. It wasn't just about the money or the success. It was about the journey, the lessons learned, and the people who had helped her along the way. She knew that the road ahead would have its challenges, but she was ready for whatever came next. With John's continued support and her own determination, there was no limit to what she could accomplish. Emma had finally taken control of her destiny, and the future had never looked brighter. As Emma looked around her bustling diner, she felt a sense of pride she hadn't experienced in years. The new locations were thriving, and the business was expanding beyond what she had ever imagined. It was a dream come true, but with success came even more challenges. She found herself spending more time in meetings, making important decisions, and managing a growing team. Some days, it felt like the weight of the world was on her shoulders, but she had come this far, and she knew she could handle it. Despite the whirlwind of her new responsibilities, Emma kept her focus on the values that had made the diner successful in the first place. It wasn't just about profits or expansion. It was about the people, the community, and the warmth that had always been at the heart of her family's business. Emma had become more than just a businesswoman. She had become a leader, guiding her staff, making tough decisions, and steering the business toward a future that aligned with her vision. One evening, after a long day at the office, Emma sat down at her desk to go over the numbers. Her mind was racing, but as she sifted through the reports, she felt a sense of satisfaction, knowing that everything was heading in the right direction. Just as she was about to call it a night, her phone buzzed with a message from John. "Meeting tomorrow at 10. Let's talk about the next step for the business." Emma's heart skipped a beat. She knew that John had been helping her with the business, but she also knew that he had been quietly watching her grow into the leader she was becoming. She was ready to take the next step. She had learned so much from him, but she also knew that it was time to start making decisions on her own. The next morning, she met John at his office. As she entered the room, she could see that he had been busy. There were papers spread out on the table, and a large whiteboard covered with notes and ideas. He stood up to greet her with a smile. "Good morning, Emma. Glad you could make it." Emma nodded, her mind focused on the task at hand. "What's the next step?" she asked. John gestured to the whiteboard. "Well, we've reached a point where we need to think about brand identity, marketing, and expanding beyond the city. We've got the systems in place, but now it's time to elevate the business and make it a household name." Emma's eyes lit up. She had always dreamed of seeing her family's diner recognized far and wide. She had the passion, and with John's guidance, she knew it was possible. But there was one thing she had to do first. She needed to make sure her values remained at the core of everything she did. "What do you think about creating a loyalty program for customers? Maybe some exclusive perks for regulars?" Emma suggested. John raised an eyebrow, clearly impressed. "That's a great idea. Building a loyal customer base is key to long-term success. We'll make it a priority." Emma felt a sense of relief wash over her. She had always known that her customers were the backbone of the business. They were the ones who had kept the diner alive all these years. "I want to make sure we don't lose sight of the community aspect of the diner," she added. "We've always been a place for people to gather, to feel like they belong. That's what sets us apart from the bigger chains." John nodded thoughtfully. "Agreed. We can still maintain that sense of community while expanding. It's all about finding the balance." Emma smiled, feeling more confident than ever. She was finally in control of her business, and she knew she had the support of people who cared about her vision. "Let's do it," she said, determination in her voice. Over the next few months, Emma and John worked tirelessly to take the diner to the next level. They launched the loyalty program, which was met with overwhelming success. Customers loved the exclusive deals and special events, and word spread quickly. The diner became a local favorite, and the other locations began to attract even more attention. As the business grew, so did Emma's confidence. She was no longer just a waitress running a small family business. She was a savvy entrepreneur with a clear vision and the skills to back it up. But with all the success, Emma never lost sight of what mattered most. She continued to foster the sense of community that had made the diner so special in the first place. She made sure that her staff felt valued, and she worked hard to keep the diner a place where everyone felt welcome. One evening, as Emma sat at the counter, watching the busy crowd, she was approached by one of her longtime customers. "I just wanted to say thank you," the customer said. This place has always been like a second home to me. You've made it even better, and I can see how much hard work you've put into it. It's inspiring." Emma smiled, her heart swelling with pride. "Thank you. That means the world to me. I just want to make sure this place is everything it can be, for the community, for my family, and for all of you." As the customer left, Emma stood behind the counter, taking a moment to appreciate how far she had come. She had built something that was bigger than just a diner. She had created a space where people could connect, share stories, and find comfort. It wasn't just about food. It was about the people who walked through the door. Emma had come a long way from the shy waitress she once was. She had built a thriving business, but more importantly, she had stayed true to herself and the values that mattered most. The future was bright, and Emma knew that no matter what came next, she was ready for it. As the months passed, Emma's diner continued to thrive. The loyalty program was a massive success, and the community surrounding her business grew stronger. More and more people came through the doors, not just for the food, but for the warmth and connection Emma had carefully cultivated. The new locations were doing well, but Emma had not forgotten where it all started. Every evening, after a long day of meetings and business decisions, she would walk into the original diner, take a deep breath, and feel the comfort of familiarity. This place, the heart of her family's legacy, would always be her home. Despite the growing success, Emma had not been without her challenges. Running a growing business wasn't easy. There were more employees to manage, more finances to oversee, and more competition from larger chains. But through it all, Emma remained grounded. She leaned on the lessons she had learned, on the values that had carried her this far: hard work, dedication, and an unwavering belief in the power of community. One day, as she was sitting at her desk, going over financial reports for the new locations, her phone buzzed with a message. It was from John. "Meeting at noon. I want to discuss something important. Can you make it?" Emma had grown accustomed to these meetings, but something about the message made her pause. She had been feeling overwhelmed lately. The pressure of managing so much had started to take its toll, and she wasn't sure she was ready for another round of discussions. But she knew John had been by her side through it all, and his advice had always been invaluable. So, she replied, "I'll be there." When Emma arrived at John's office, she found him looking at a set of projections on his computer screen. He looked up as she entered and gestured for her to sit down. "Good to see you, Emma. We have some things to go over." Emma took a seat, feeling a bit anxious. "What's going on, John? You said this was important." John leaned back in his chair, his gaze focused but not unkind. "It is. You've done an incredible job with the diner. The new locations are flourishing, and I can see how much you've poured into this. But it's time for the next challenge." Emma raised an eyebrow. "Next challenge?" "Yes," John continued. "You've built a solid foundation, but we need to think bigger. We've reached a point where it's time to consider franchising. We need to take the business to the next level. The market is ripe for it, and with the right approach, we could expand into multiple states. Imagine your diner brand being recognized nationwide." Emma's heart skipped a beat. Franchising? She had always dreamed of growing her family's business, but the thought of turning it into a franchise was a huge leap. She had worked so hard to keep the integrity of the diner intact. Could she really scale it up and still maintain that personal touch? "I don't know, John," Emma said, her voice uncertain. "I've worked so hard to build this from the ground up. I don't want to lose what makes it special." John nodded. "I understand. But that's why it's important to think about how we can grow while staying true to the values that got you here in the first place. We wouldn't sacrifice the quality, the community, or the spirit of the diner. We'd just expand it in a way that lets others experience what you've built." Emma sat back in her chair, processing the idea. It was exciting, yes, but also terrifying. She had always prided herself on knowing every inch of the business. Could she really delegate control and still maintain the same level of care and dedication? "I've been thinking about it for a while now," John continued, "and I believe you're ready. You have the leadership, the vision, and the heart to take this business to new heights." Emma looked at him, her mind spinning with possibilities. She had come so far. Could she really take that next step? "I just don't know if I'm ready," she admitted. "It's a lot of responsibility. I'm not sure if I can handle the pressure." John smiled kindly, his tone reassuring. "Emma, you've already done the hardest part. You've built something beautiful, something lasting. Now it's about sharing that with the world. And I'll be here to help every step of the way." We'll go at your pace, and we'll make sure everything stays aligned with your vision. Emma took a deep breath. This was it. This was the moment she had been working toward. She had always dreamed of her family's diner being something bigger, but now she was faced with the reality of what that would mean. It wasn't just about the business. It was about the legacy she was building. Okay, she said, her voice steady. Let's do it. Let's make this a franchise. John's face lit up with a smile. I knew you had it in you. We'll start with the basics, getting the business model in place, creating a franchise package, and reaching out to potential franchisees. This is going to be exciting. Over the next few months, Emma and John worked tirelessly to prepare the diner for franchising. They created detailed plans, set up training programs, and ensured that every aspect of the business was standardized to ensure consistency across locations. Emma worked closely with the team, ensuring that the values of the original diner, quality, community, and care, were infused into every part of the franchise model. As they launched the first franchise location, Emma stood in the kitchen of her original diner, watching the news coverage of the grand opening. It was happening. Her dream was becoming a reality. And through it all, she knew one thing for sure. No matter how big the business got, she would always remember where it all began. Months had passed since Emma made the bold decision to franchise her family's diner. The excitement of expanding her business had been accompanied by a whirlwind of paperwork, meetings, and preparations. Emma had learned quickly that franchising was no easy feat. There were so many moving parts: franchise agreements, standardizing operations, finding the right franchisees, and making sure her values stayed intact. Yet, through it all, she couldn't help but feel a growing sense of pride. The first franchise location had opened successfully, and it was buzzing with activity. The customers were pleased, and the staff was trained well. Emma had even visited the location several times, offering her insights, making sure everything was up to her standards. She smiled every time she saw the familiar logo on the walls, the comforting ambience of her original diner recreated in another city. But as the success of the franchise grew, so did the challenges. One evening, after closing her own diner for the night, Emma received a call from John. Emma, we need to talk. John's voice sounded urgent on the other end. She immediately sat up straight. What's going on? She asked, her heart racing. It's about the franchise expansion, John said. We're getting interest from some investors who want to take this nationwide, but we need to address a few issues with the franchise system first. There's been some feedback about inconsistencies between the locations, and we can't afford to have any problems if we're going bigger. Emma felt a knot form in her stomach. She had worked so hard to make sure everything was perfect, and now it seemed like there were cracks beginning to show. What kind of inconsistencies? She asked, trying to keep her voice steady. It's the training, the product quality across the board, and some of the locations have been struggling with staffing issues. We need to make sure that all the franchisees are on the same page, John explained. Emma sighed, leaning back in her chair. She had known that scaling up would come with its fair share of obstacles, but it was still hard to hear that things weren't running as smoothly as she had hoped. What can we do to fix it? She asked. We need to revisit the training manual, update the guidelines, and create a more structured support system for the franchisees. We also need to do a deeper dive into the staffing issues and offer them more assistance in finding the right people. Emma nodded, feeling the weight of the responsibility on her shoulders. Okay, let's fix it. I'll get to work on it. After the call, Emma spent hours reviewing the franchise operations. She looked over the training manuals, interviewed some of the franchisees, and even visited a few of the locations herself. It became clear that while the diner's concept was strong, there was a gap between the initial excitement of opening a franchise and the realities of running a business. Many franchisees were passionate but inexperienced, and without the right training and support, they were struggling to maintain the high standards Emma had set for her original diner. Emma worked tirelessly over the next few weeks, updating the training system, creating clearer guidelines, and offering more hands-on support for the franchisees. She also focused on improving the hiring process, ensuring that each location had a strong team in place. Despite the challenges, Emma felt more confident than ever. She had faced difficult situations before and had always managed to find a way through. Now, she was putting her experience to work for her growing business. With John's help, they also worked on developing a stronger communication system, ensuring that every franchisee felt supported and understood. Slowly but surely, things began to turn around. The franchises that had struggled started seeing improvements. Staff morale improved, and product consistency was restored. Emma could feel the momentum shifting. It wasn't just about expansion anymore. It was about maintaining the integrity of the diner's values and ensuring that every customer who walked into a franchise location had the same experience they would have at the original diner. Emma stood in her original diner one evening, watching the busy dinner rush unfold before her. The chatter, the clinking of glasses, the smell of freshly cooked food. It felt like home. The success of the franchise was important, but this was the heart of it all. She couldn't let go of what made the diner special. As she walked out from behind the counter, she was greeted by one of her longtime customers, a friendly older woman who had been coming to the diner for years. "Emma," she said with a smile, "I just wanted to say, you've done a wonderful job. This place has always been special, and I'm so glad to see it growing." Emma smiled back, feeling her heart swell with pride. "Thank you," she said. "It's been a journey, but we're getting there." The woman nodded knowingly. "I can see it. You've always put your heart into this place. I'm sure it'll only get better." Emma watched the woman walk away, a warmth filling her chest. It was moments like this that reminded her why she had started all of this in the first place. It wasn't just about building a business. It was about creating a space where people could connect, feel welcome, and experience something meaningful. She realized that no matter how big the business grew, the core values would remain the same. The next chapter of her journey was just beginning, and Emma knew that she was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. She had built something strong, and with the right support, the diner would continue to thrive, one location at a time. It had been a year since Emma had made the leap to franchise her family's diner, and as she stood in her office, looking over the progress they had made, she could hardly believe how far they had come. The first few months had been full of challenges, but now, with a few successful locations across the region, Emma was beginning to see the bigger picture. The diner had grown into a small, but recognizable brand. It was becoming the go-to spot for families, friends, and even business professionals looking for a place with heart and good food. However, the growth also brought new challenges. As the diner expanded, Emma felt the pressure of maintaining the personal connection with her customers that had always made the place feel like home. She had never wanted to lose that sense of warmth and community that had defined the diner for so long. But with more employees, more locations, and more customers to manage, it was becoming increasingly difficult to ensure that each customer walked away feeling like they were part of something special. Emma sat back in her chair, running a hand through her hair as she thought about the direction she wanted to take next. The business was at a crossroads. She needed to scale it up, but she didn't want to sacrifice what made it unique. Just then, her phone buzzed with a message from John. "Can we meet today? There's something we need to discuss about the future of the franchise." Emma's heart skipped a beat. John had been a constant support throughout this entire journey, and she trusted his judgment. She quickly replied, "I'll be there in an hour." When Emma arrived at John's office, he greeted her with a smile, but there was something different in his eyes, a seriousness that made her sit up straighter. "I've been thinking a lot about the future," John began, his tone calm but firm. "We've done well so far, but we need to talk about what comes next. If we want to keep expanding and maintain the success we've had, we need to get even more strategic." Emma listened intently, knowing John was right. Expansion had been great, but she was feeling the strain of managing multiple locations. The diner had grown, but so had the complexity of running it. "I've been thinking about that too," she admitted. "But I'm worried that as we expand, we might lose the personal touch. What made us successful was the feeling people got when they walked into the original diner. I don't want to lose that." John nodded, his expression understanding. "I get that, and I think it's important that we keep that sense of community. But we also need to think bigger. There's potential here to take the brand nationwide. But to do that, we'll need to start putting systems in place that ensure quality and customer service are maintained, no matter where the location is." Emma leaned forward, her mind racing. "What are you suggesting?" "We need to start focusing on building a stronger corporate structure," John said. "We can't keep doing everything ourselves. You've been doing an amazing job, Emma, but if we want to scale, we need to hire key leaders who can manage the day-to-day operations and maintain the standards you've set. We need a team that can take the vision forward without losing sight of the core values of the business." Emma paused, letting the idea sink in. She had always prided herself on being hands-on, involved in every aspect of the diner. Letting go of some of that control felt daunting. "So, you're saying I need to trust others with more responsibility?" she asked, her voice tinged with uncertainty. "Exactly," John replied. "It's about building a leadership team that shares your vision and can handle the operational side of things. You can still be the driving force behind the business, but you need to start thinking like a CEO, not just a business owner. You need to focus on the bigger picture, strategy, growth, and building relationships that will carry the brand forward." Emma thought about it for a moment. It was terrifying, but she knew John was right. If she wanted the diner to grow into something more, she couldn't do it alone. She had to let go of some of the day-to-day tasks and focus on what mattered most, the future of the brand. "Okay," she said finally, her voice steady with resolve. "I'm in. Let's do it. Let's build the team." Over the next few weeks, Emma and John worked on assembling a leadership team. They hired a new operations manager, a marketing director, and a customer service specialist. Each person they brought on was handpicked for their skills, experience, and alignment with the diner's core values. As the team came together, Emma felt a sense of relief. She no longer had to handle every aspect of the business herself. She had a strong team of people she trusted, and that allowed her to focus on the strategic direction of the business. With the new team in place, Emma's role as CEO became more defined. She spent her time building relationships with suppliers, expanding the brand's reach, and exploring new markets. The first step in this new chapter was opening a flagship location in a city that had always been on her radar, Chicago. It was a bold move, but Emma knew it was the right one. Chicago was a vibrant city with a thriving food scene, and it was the perfect place to introduce her diner to a wider audience. The grand opening was a huge success. The new location was packed with customers, and the staff, trained by Emma's leadership team, ensured that the service was just as warm and welcoming as the original diner. As Emma stood in the bustling new location, watching her dream grow even bigger, she realized how far she had come. She had started as a waitress in a small, family-run diner, and now she was leading a growing business with a bright future ahead of her. The journey hadn't been easy, but it had been worth every step. And with her team by her side, Emma knew that the best was yet to come. As Emma walked through the newly opened flagship diner in Chicago, she couldn't help but feel a rush of pride. The grand opening had been a huge success, and customers were pouring in. The staff was working efficiently, the atmosphere was just as warm and inviting as the original diner, and the brand was finally starting to feel like a real presence in the market. Yet, despite the success, Emma was aware that the work was far from over. She had put her heart and soul into making her family's diner a success, and now that it was growing, she had to face new challenges. She needed to ensure that the standards she had set for the original diner remained intact as they expanded. She had already seen how difficult it could be to maintain that connection with customers and ensure quality control across multiple locations. But she was ready for this new phase. Emma knew that being the CEO meant making tough decisions and trusting her team, something she was still learning to do. Her operations manager, marketing director, and customer service specialist had proven to be invaluable, and she was beginning to see that delegating responsibility was crucial for growth. One evening, as she sat in her office, reflecting on the successes and challenges of the past few months, she received a call from John. "How's everything going in Chicago?" he asked, his tone casual, but with an underlying curiosity. "It's going well," Emma replied, smiling. "We've got a lot of buzz, and people seem to love the place. But I'm already thinking about what comes next. I don't want to get too comfortable here. We've got more work to do." "I'm glad to hear that," John said. "But remember, it's important to pace yourself. You've already accomplished so much, and there's still a lot of potential. Let's take it one step at a time." Emma sighed, leaning back in her chair. She had always been the type to push herself harder than anyone else, but she also understood the importance of balance. She had to make sure she didn't burn out. I know, she said, running a hand through her hair. "I just want to make sure we keep growing. I'm proud of what we've done, but I don't want to lose sight of what made this place special." "I hear you," John responded. "But let's not forget, your biggest strength is the community you've built. The people who come to your diner aren't just looking for good food. They're looking for a place to feel connected. Don't lose that in the process of growth." Emma paused, letting John's words sink in. He was right, of course. The sense of community, the warmth that had always been a part of the diner, was what made it so special. It wasn't just about the food. It was about the experience, the feeling of belonging. She couldn't let that slip away as they expanded. "You're right," Emma said finally, her voice steady. "I've been so focused on growth that I've been forgetting why we're doing this in the first place. It's not just about opening new locations. It's about staying true to our roots and making sure we're providing that same sense of connection for every customer." "Exactly," John said, sounding pleased. "You've built something amazing, Emma. But it's important to keep that personal touch, even as you scale. People will keep coming back for the food, sure, but they'll come back for the experience you've created. Don't lose sight of that." After the call, Emma felt a renewed sense of clarity. She had been so caught up in the logistics of expansion that she had momentarily lost sight of the heart of her business. She needed to make sure that as the brand grew, the community aspect remained intact. The next morning, Emma held a meeting with her leadership team. She explained her concerns about maintaining the diner's sense of community as they expanded and asked for their input on how to keep that spirit alive. Together, they brainstormed ideas for customer engagement, ways to involve local communities, and how to continue offering that personalized experience that had made the original diner so special. One of the marketing directors suggested implementing local events, like cooking classes and community nights, to give each location a unique identity that tied it to its neighborhood. Emma loved the idea and decided to roll it out in all the new locations. As they continued discussing, Emma felt a surge of optimism. She realized that scaling the business didn't mean sacrificing its essence. With the right team in place, they could expand while staying true to what made the diner so beloved. Over the next few months, the diner expanded to more cities. Each new location was carefully selected based on its potential to fit within the brand's values, and Emma made sure to visit each one personally to ensure that the atmosphere and customer experience matched what she had built in the original location. Emma's leadership style began to evolve as well. She was learning to trust her team more, and she found herself stepping back from the day-to-day operations, focusing more on strategy and the long-term vision for the business. The diner's growth was no longer just about expansion. It was about creating a lasting legacy. One evening, as she sat down with John to review the latest progress, she felt a deep sense of gratitude. "We've come a long way," she said, smiling at him. "I couldn't have done this without your help." John smiled back, his eyes filled with pride. "You've done all the hard work, Emma. I'm just here to support you. But it's been incredible to watch you grow, both as a businesswoman and as a leader." Emma looked out the window, thinking about everything they had accomplished and everything still to come. She knew that there were more challenges ahead, but she also knew that, with her team, her vision, and her values, they could face anything that came their way. As the months continued to fly by, Emma's business grew in ways she had never imagined. The success of the Chicago flagship location had opened the doors to even more opportunities, and with each new franchise, she found herself facing a growing sense of responsibility. The more locations they opened, the more she realized how much it took to keep everything aligned with the original vision. Emma was no longer just managing a few employees. She was now the leader of an expanding empire, responsible for dozens of staff members across multiple states. With every new franchise, there were new challenges, but Emma remained determined to preserve what made the diner special: the sense of community, the welcoming atmosphere, and the quality food that had started it all. Despite the overwhelming success, Emma had become more aware of the toll that expansion was taking on her personal life. She had little time for herself, and her visits to the original diner had become fewer and fewer. She knew that in order to continue growing the business while staying true to its roots, she needed to find balance. One evening, after a particularly stressful day, Emma sat down in her office to go through the monthly reports. She noticed something unexpected. The performance of some of the newer locations wasn't as strong as she had hoped. While most of the franchises were thriving, a few were struggling to maintain customer loyalty and consistency in their operations. Emma's heart sank as she reviewed the data. She had worked so hard to build a brand that people could trust, and now she feared that the rapid growth was starting to show cracks in the foundation. Just as she was about to call her team together to address the issues, her phone buzzed. It was a message from John. "Let's meet tomorrow. I think we need to discuss some things about the future of the business." Emma knew that John had always been an invaluable mentor to her, but now, more than ever, she was starting to feel the weight of the decisions that lay ahead. The next morning, she met John at his office. His usual calm demeanor was replaced with a more serious tone, and as soon as she sat down, he got straight to the point. "Emma, I've been looking at the numbers, and I think we need to slow down the expansion for now," he said. "The current model works, but as we expand, it's clear that some locations are struggling to maintain the standards that you've set. We can't keep growing at this pace without risking the quality that made this business great in the first place." Emma took a deep breath, grateful that John wasn't sugarcoating the situation. She had suspected something wasn't quite right, but hearing it out loud made it all the more real. "So, what do you suggest?" she asked, trying to hold on to her composure. "We need to take a step back and focus on the foundations again," John replied. "It's time to put more focus on training, quality control, and customer loyalty programs. We also need to consider whether we're spreading ourselves too thin. If we rush expansion without the right systems in place, we could lose everything we've worked for." Emma nodded, realizing the truth in John's words. She had always been someone who moved quickly, who believed in pushing forward, but now she understood the importance of pausing and reassessing. "I think you're right," she said, her voice steady but filled with concern. "I've been so focused on growth that I haven't given enough attention to the smaller details. We can't lose sight of what makes us different from the big chains." Over the next few weeks, Emma worked tirelessly to make the necessary changes. She put a temporary hold on new franchises and focused on improving the operations of the existing locations. She implemented a more structured training program, emphasizing customer service and food quality, and worked with the management teams at each location to address any inconsistencies. Emma also began visiting each franchise personally, spending time with the staff and getting a better sense of the challenges they faced. It was a humbling experience. Emma realized that her initial instinct to scale quickly had been a double-edged sword. While growth brought new opportunities, it also meant more to manage, and she couldn't be everywhere at once. As she continued her work, Emma also began taking more time for herself. She started taking short trips to recharge, something she hadn't done in months. Her father, who had been spending more time at home as his health improved, encouraged her to take the breaks she needed. Slowly but surely, Emma found a new rhythm. The changes she had made to the franchise system began to show results. Customer satisfaction improved, staff morale increased, and Emma felt more in control. The diner's growth wasn't just about how many locations they could open. It was about creating a lasting legacy, one that focused on quality and community, rather than just expansion for the sake of it. One evening, as she walked through the original diner, Emma was approached by one of her longtime customers. The man, an older gentleman who had been a regular for years, smiled at her as she passed. "I just wanted to say, Emma, you've really done something special here. It's not just the food, it's the feeling. It's why we all keep coming back." Emma smiled back, her heart swelling with gratitude. She had built something meaningful, something that went beyond business. And as she looked around at the familiar faces, she knew that no matter how far the business went, the spirit of the diner, the warmth, the community, and the love for good food would always be at the heart of it. As Emma stood in the kitchen of her original diner, watching the staff work, she felt a profound sense of fulfillment. The challenges of expansion were far from over, but she had made significant strides in re-establishing the balance between growth and maintaining the heart of what made her diner unique. The systems were in place, the training was refined, and most importantly, the essence of community remained strong. Emma was no longer just a small-town diner owner. She had become the leader of a thriving business, with several locations across the country. Yet, despite all her success, she knew that there was still much to learn. She spent more time these days working on refining her leadership style, developing strategies to manage her growing team, and finding ways to make sure that every decision aligned with her original vision. But, she realized, there was something she had been neglecting, herself. It had been months since she had truly taken time to slow down. The constant demands of the business had made it hard for her to find moments to breathe, let alone relax. One day, as she was leaving the office after another long meeting, John called her. "Hey Emma, how's everything going?" he asked. His voice was calm, but she could tell that he knew she was burning the candle at both ends. Busy as usual, she replied, trying to sound upbeat. But I'm getting there. The new locations are doing well, and we're ironing out the kinks. That's great to hear, John said. But I think you need to take a step back and recharge. You've been working nonstop, and I can see that it's taking its toll. You can't pour from an empty cup, Emma. His words hit her harder than she expected. She had always been so focused on pushing forward that she hadn't stopped to consider the toll it was taking on her health and well-being. I'm fine, she said, brushing it off. There's just a lot to do. I'll be okay. Emma, you're not just the business, John said, his tone softer now. You are the heart of it, but you need to take care of yourself, too. How about this? Take a weekend off. Go somewhere quiet. Spend some time away from the business. I'll handle things for you while you're gone. Emma hesitated. It was hard to imagine taking a break when so much was riding on the business. But John was right. She couldn't keep going at this pace. I'll think about it, she said, finally. Over the next few days, the thought of taking time off lingered in the back of her mind. She realized that it wasn't just about her business. It was about her own well-being and sanity. She couldn't continue to lead with passion and purpose if she didn't take care of herself first. After much thought, Emma made the decision. She called her team together and told them she was going to take a weekend away. They were supportive, assuring her that everything would be taken care of in her absence. It was a strange feeling to step away, but as she packed her bags and left the city for a quiet cabin by a lake, she felt a wave of relief wash over her. The fresh air, the stillness of the water, and the time away from the constant noise of the business allowed Emma to reconnect with herself. She spent the weekend reading, journaling, and reflecting on everything she had achieved. She realized that despite the growth and success, she had been neglecting the very thing that had brought her this far, the sense of joy and fulfillment she felt when she was connected to her purpose. Emma returned to the city feeling recharged, with a new perspective on her life and business. She knew that her journey wasn't just about success. It was about finding a balance that allowed her to enjoy the process and take pride in every step. She was ready to embrace the future with a renewed sense of energy and a deeper understanding of what truly mattered. The following week, she met with John again. I took your advice, she said with a smile. And it was exactly what I needed. I feel like a new person. John smiled back. I'm glad to hear that. You can't keep building something amazing without taking care of yourself along the way. Emma nodded. I've realized that now. I've been so focused on the business that I've forgotten why I started this in the first place. As they discussed the next steps for the diner, Emma felt a sense of calm she hadn't felt in months. She was still passionate about growing the business, but now, she knew that success wasn't just about reaching new milestones. It was about enjoying the journey and staying true to herself. The balance was key. With a clearer mind and a renewed sense of purpose, Emma was ready to continue leading her business into the future. She knew that the challenges would continue to come, but she was confident that with the right mindset, she could handle anything that came her way. As Emma stood in her office, looking over the new marketing materials for the diner's latest expansion, she couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and apprehension. The journey to this point had been nothing short of transformative. She had grown not only as a business owner but also as a leader, and while she had faced her share of obstacles, she had come out stronger every time. Her decision to take a step back and recharge had been pivotal. She was more focused, more clear-headed, and more determined to make the business thrive in a way that felt authentic to her original vision. But now, there was a new challenge on the horizon. The diner was expanding again, and with each new location, the weight of responsibility grew heavier. As much as she loved the idea of her family's diner being recognized across the country, Emma knew that scaling up came with sacrifices. One of the biggest challenges was maintaining the consistency and quality that had been the hallmark of her original restaurant. She had made it a priority to visit each location and ensure that the same warmth and care she had instilled in the first diner was present in every new one. It wasn't easy. She had seen some locations struggle to maintain the atmosphere and the personal connection that had made the diner so beloved. The larger the business grew, the more she realized how important it was to create a culture that transcended the walls of the restaurant. It wasn't just about serving food. It was about creating an experience that people could rely on. One afternoon, Emma sat down with John to discuss the next phase of their expansion. He had been her constant support, offering advice when needed and challenging her when it was necessary. He had become more than just a business partner. He had become a trusted advisor, someone who shared her vision and understood her values. "We've got another franchise opening in a few weeks," John began, his tone measured. "And I think it's time we start thinking about brand positioning. We've been focusing on quality and customer experience, but we need to make sure that message resonates with a larger audience. We need to define what the brand stands for in a way that's clear and consistent." Emma leaned back in her chair, considering his words. She had always been focused on the personal touch, the relationships with her customers, the sense of community. But John was right. As the business grew, the message needed to be clearer. They needed to define what made the diner special in a way that was accessible and understandable for people who had never set foot in one of their locations. "You're right," Emma said after a pause. "We need to make sure we're telling a story that resonates, not just with our regulars, but with new customers too. It's not just about the food. It's about the feeling people get when they come here. We've built something more than just a restaurant. We've built a community." John smiled, clearly pleased with her response. "Exactly. And I think we need to expand on that. Let's start thinking about the core message we want to send out. What do we stand for? What makes us different from the bigger chains?" Emma's mind began to race as she thought about the future of the diner. She had always believed that the diner's success came from its authenticity, its ability to create a space where people could feel comfortable, where they could connect with others. It wasn't just about serving a meal, it was about offering an experience. And that was the message they needed to convey. "I think it's about belonging," Emma said slowly, the idea starting to take shape in her mind. "People come to the diner not just for the food, but for the feeling of being part of something. It's about creating a space where everyone feels welcome, no matter who they are. We're not just a place to eat, we're a place to connect." John nodded in agreement. "That's a strong message. It's something people can relate to, and it sets us apart from the competition." Over the next few weeks, Emma and John worked with their marketing team to develop a brand positioning strategy that reflected the core values of the diner. They focused on the sense of community, the welcoming atmosphere, and the quality food that had made the original diner a success. They created marketing materials that highlighted the diner as a place where people could come together, share stories, and create memories. As the marketing campaign began to roll out, Emma couldn't help but feel a renewed sense of excitement. This was more than just a business. It was a reflection of who she was and what she valued. The expansion was no longer just about growth. It was about sharing her vision with the world. But even as things continued to grow, Emma remained committed to the values that had gotten her to this point. She knew that the diner's success wasn't just about the food or the brand. It was about the connections people made and the way they felt when they walked through the door. With each new franchise, Emma was reminded of the power of community. She had built something that people could rely on, a place that would always make them feel welcome. And as the business expanded, Emma knew that as long as she stayed true to that spirit, the diner would continue to thrive. She had come so far from where she started, but she knew that this was just the beginning. The journey was far from over, and Emma was ready for whatever came next. As the diner continued to grow, Emma found herself reflecting on the incredible journey she had been on. She stood in front of the original diner, now a landmark in the community, watching the bustling crowd inside. The familiar faces, the laughter, the hum of conversation, it was everything she had dreamed of and more. The expansion had been a challenge, but it had also been an opportunity to bring her vision to a broader audience. She had created a business that not only served great food, but also brought people together. The connections she had built with her customers and her team were the foundation of everything she had accomplished. It wasn't just the food that made the diner special, it was the community that had grown around it. And now, as she looked at the new locations and the future ahead, she knew that she had built something truly meaningful. Emma had learned so much along the way. She had learned to trust her instincts, to lean on her team, and to take risks. She had learned that success wasn't just about the bottom line. It was about the people. It was about creating something that would last, something that would stand the test of time. The business had grown, but so had Emma. She had gone from a waitress working hard to keep her family's diner afloat to a confident CEO leading a thriving business. But through it all, she had stayed true to the values that had gotten her to this point: quality, community, and care. Now, as the company moved forward, Emma knew that it was time to take on a new challenge. She was ready to step into a more strategic role, one that allowed her to focus on the big picture and the long-term vision for the business. She had assembled a strong leadership team, and she trusted them to manage the day-to-day operations. With their support, she could focus on what really mattered, building relationships, expanding the brand, and continuing to provide a space for people to connect. One evening, after another successful grand opening, Emma sat down with her father at the original diner. It had been a long time since they had shared a quiet moment like this, and Emma cherished the time they had together. Her father, who had once been so worried about the future of the diner, was now at peace, content with the legacy they had created. "You've done it, Emma," he said with a smile, his voice full of pride. "You've turned this place into something special. I couldn't be prouder of you." Emma smiled back, feeling a wave of emotion. "I couldn't have done it without you, Dad. This is as much your success as it is mine." Her father nodded, his eyes twinkling with pride. "You've always had a vision, Emma. You just needed the right opportunity. And now look at you. You've built something that's going to last." Emma looked around the diner, taking in the familiar sights and sounds, and felt a deep sense of gratitude. She had come so far, and yet, she knew there was still so much more to do. The future was full of possibilities, and she was ready to embrace whatever came next. As the sun began to set outside, casting a warm glow over the diner, Emma felt a sense of peace wash over her. The journey had been long and challenging, but it had been worth every step. She had built a business that was more than just a place to eat. It was a community, a gathering spot where people came together to share stories, celebrate milestones, and create memories. And as Emma looked to the future, she knew that her journey was far from over. There were more people to reach, more communities to build, and more opportunities to create. But no matter how big the business became, Emma knew that the values that had guided her from the beginning, quality, community, and care, would always remain at the heart of what she did. The diner had been the starting point of her journey, but it had become so much more. It had become a symbol of what was possible when passion, hard work, and a commitment to others came together. And as Emma looked forward, she was excited to continue building something that would last for generations to come. If you're looking for inspiring and touching stories of resilience, community, and personal growth, this is a journey you won't want to miss. Follow Emma, a hardworking waitress, as she transforms her family's diner into a thriving business, touching lives along the way. From humble beginnings to expanding her brand across multiple states, Emma's journey is a powerful example of how a simple act of kindness can change everything. These touching stories are filled with challenges, triumphs, and lessons that will keep you engaged from start to finish. As Emma faces the ups and downs of business expansion, she learns the importance of maintaining quality, nurturing relationships, and staying true to her values. With her determination and the support of her team, Emma rises to meet the obstacles ahead, and in the process, builds a legacy that will last for generations. These touching stories show how Emma balances ambition with compassion and ultimately discovers that success isn't just about growth. It's about making a positive impact on the people around you. Experience the inspiring and touching stories of Emma's journey, where personal growth, hard work, and the heart of a community come together to create something extraordinary. This is one of the most heartwarming and touching stories you'll hear, and it proves that when you stay true to yourself and your community, anything is possible.